Power is not gifted. It's not inherited. And it's not reserved for the loudest voice in the room. Real power is carved piece by piece through habits so sharp they cut through weakness, doubt, and distraction. You've seen it before. The person who doesn't need to shout, yet everyone leans in when they speak. The one who walks into a room and shifts the entire atmosphere without saying a word. That presence isn't luck. It's built. The Stoics taught that strength isn't about controlling the world. It's about mastering yourself so deeply that the world has no choice but to adjust to you. Power isn't something you chase. It's something you embody. So if you're tired of being overlooked, dismissed, or drained by people who shouldn't even have access to your energy, this is where it changes. Because today you're going to see the habits that separate the ordinary from the untouchable. If you value clarity, discipline, and the courage to rise above mediocrity, please subscribe. Think of it as committing to your own growth. A small vow to step closer each day to the person you were meant to become. Habit 1. Control your face. Most people don't realize how much of their power leaks out in the smallest ways. It's not the big mistakes that betray you first. It's the little habits. Tapping your fingers when you're nervous, raising your eyebrows when you're unsure, or smiling too quickly just to make others feel comfortable. People don't even need you to speak before they begin writing a story about you in their minds. The truth is we give away far more than we keep. And in a world where perception often shapes reality, mastering the face you show the world isn't vanity, it's survival. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believe that control over yourself is the foundation of freedom. Think about how many times you've walked into a room and instantly judged someone just by looking at them. Before they opened their mouth, before they proved their intelligence, you already decided if they looked confident, insecure, nervous, or dangerous. Others do the same to you. If your face betrays you with every emotion, you're not leading that moment. You're surrendering it. Neutrality is your secret weapon. Not emptiness, not being a stone, but neutrality, a calm stillness that unsettles those who expect you to overreact. When someone insults you, it's tempting to flare your nostrils, raise your eyebrows, or force a fake smile to cover the sting. But every one of those micro-expressions tells the other person that their arrow has landed. If instead you hold steady, unshaken, something shifts. They no longer feel the victory of having pierced your skin. Instead, they face the unsettling weight of silence, of mystery. People fear what they cannot read. To conquer your face is to conquer the surface level of yourself, and in turn to free yourself from becoming a puppet pulled by every passing comment. You've probably heard the phrase, "Never let them see you sweat." It's repeated so often it sounds like a cliché, but at its core, it's a practice of Stoic discipline. Every time you allow your face to twitch in discomfort or widen in panic, you're signaling weakness. Imagine two people being questioned under pressure. One fidgets, bites their lips, and avoids eye contact. The other sits calmly, their expression unreadable, their gaze steady. Which one would you trust? Which one would you hesitate to challenge? The answer is clear. The one who reveals nothing holds the power. Aristotle hinted at this truth when he said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." If you know that your face is your first language, then you understand that wisdom is not just in what you say, but in what you refuse to show. Of course, this doesn't mean you should aim to look cold or lifeless. That only creates distance without respect. What you want is control. Picture a calm lake. The surface looks still, but beneath it, currents are moving with purpose. That's the effect you want your presence to have. Calm above, deliberate below. When you control your face, you don't suppress your emotions. You master their timing. You learn when to reveal warmth and when to hold back. Plato once wrote, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." That victory doesn't come from hiding your humanity. It comes from not letting your humanity be used against you. Let's make this practical. The next time you're in a conversation where someone pushes your buttons, practice the art of stillness. Keep your face neutral. Don't let the corners of your mouth twitch into defensiveness. Don't widen your eyes to prove you're listening harder. Just stay calm, breathing steady with a relaxed gaze. This doesn't mean you're ignoring the person. It means you're refusing to let them dictate your inner state. Over time, this builds a reputation. People begin to realize that they cannot throw you off balance, and that realization shifts how they treat you. Suddenly, they hesitate to push too hard, because your lack of reaction makes them question their own position. There's also an unexpected gift that comes with controlling your face. You create space for better thinking. When you stop overreacting physically, your mind slows down. You're no longer scrambling to defend yourself with expressions. You're free to observe, calculate, and respond with clarity. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Reaction doesn't just happen in your words. It happens in your face. A neutral face buys you time. And in that time, you make better choices. Choices that reinforce strength instead of exposing weakness. Think of some of the most respected figures in history. Their power wasn't in constant outbursts or exaggerated reactions. It was in the way they carried themselves, often with silence and stillness. There's a reason statues of great philosophers and leaders are carved with calm, composed expressions. That image communicates something eternal. Strength doesn't scream, it steadies. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People will always test you. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes without even knowing it. A sarcastic comment, a dismissive gesture, an impatient sigh. It's all bait to see how quickly you'll reveal yourself. And if you react instantly with your face betraying your frustration or eagerness to please, you've already lost the battle. The Stoics would tell you this. Mastery begins at the point of resistance. If you can resist the urge to let your face explode with emotion, you've already taken the first step toward mastering the room. So how do you build this habit? Start small. Practice in everyday moments. When someone cuts you off in traffic, don't grimace or throw your hands up. Breathe and hold steady. When someone interrupts you mid-sentence, resist the urge to scowl. Finish calmly without rushing. When you receive praise, don't beam immediately as if you've been starving for approval. Smile only if you truly choose to, not because your body betrays your craving. Each small act of restraint is a step toward becoming unreadable. In the end, controlling your face isn't about deception. It's about discipline. It's about owning the first impression before anyone else has the chance to write it for you. Power is not always in the words you speak, but in the signals you refuse to give away. By mastering your face, you're telling the world, I am not a puppet pulled by your strings. I am my own sovereign. That's exactly what this habit gives you. The quiet, unshakable strength of being in control of yourself before trying to control anyone else. And that's why this first battlefield matters so much. If you lose control of your face, you lose the foundation of your presence. But if you win here, you create an aura of mystery and composure that makes people think twice before underestimating you. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about protecting your inner self from being manipulated, about choosing when and how to reveal your truth. Control your face and you begin to control your life. Habit 2. Think in leverage, not effort. When most people feel stuck in life, their first instinct is to push harder. They add more hours to the day, sacrifice more sleep, and convince themselves that if they just grind long enough, the breakthrough will come. But often the breakthrough never arrives. The person simply burns out, exhausted by effort, trapped in the belief that intensity is the same as progress. It's a trap many of us fall into, believing that sweat equals success. But what if the real key to power wasn't about adding effort, but about shifting perspective? What if it was less about how hard you work, and more about where you apply that work? The Stoics would call this wisdom in action, not fighting every battle, but knowing which battles are worth your energy. Epictetus said wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. In the same way, true power is not about endless activity, but about precise leverage. Think of leverage like the ancient tool. It is a lever and a fulcrum. With just the right angle, a single person can move a massive stone that 10 men could not. This is the difference between the average person and the powerful one. The average person thinks success is about grinding harder, doing more, filling their calendar with endless tasks. The powerful person asks a different question. What one move creates the biggest shift? Instead of fighting with sheer muscle, they look for the hinge that swings the door. They understand that one well-placed action can make 10 other actions unnecessary. It's not about doing everything yourself. It's about becoming the architect who designs systems so effort multiplies even in your absence. You see this everywhere in life. The worker who spends years hustling late nights, yet remains replaceable because he never stops to design systems that outlast him. The business owner who answers every email personally, micromanaging details, never realizing that her energy would be better spent creating a process so others could handle it. The student who rereads notes endlessly, believing more hours means better results, when in reality, applying one sharp method of recall could save half the time. These are examples of effort without leverage. They create exhaustion, not power. Aristotle once observed, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." Similarly, it's the mark of a powerful mind to test whether the actions you are taking are truly necessary or simply noise disguised as progress. Carl Jung saw this in the human psyche. He warned that without awareness, people repeat patterns that keep them enslaved. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For many, the endless grind is nothing more than an unconscious pattern, believing that constant effort is noble, even when it leads nowhere. To break free, you have to step back and ask, what lever am I pulling? Where does my action create ripples that extend far beyond the moment? The unconscious worker thinks in terms of hours. The conscious leader thinks in terms of leverage. One is consumed by time. The other bends time around them. Let's make this concrete. Imagine two different people building influence. One spends hours posting content, replying to every comment, chasing attention. The other creates one timeless piece of work that continues to spread long after they've stopped pushing it. That's leverage. Or take two leaders. One is constantly firefighting, solving every small problem for their team. The other builds a culture where the team solves problems themselves. That's leverage. One builds a machine, the other becomes the machine. Which life would you rather live? The Stoics taught that freedom comes not from serving every demand, but from choosing where to place your energy. If you pour your life into endless tasks, you'll look back and wonder where it all went. But if you live with leverage, your time compounds into something greater than yourself. There's also a psychological truth here. When you grind endlessly, you create a mindset of scarcity. There's never enough time, never enough energy, never enough you. But when you think in terms of leverage, you create abundance. One action fuels 10 results. One decision eliminates 10 problems. This is why powerful people seem calm, even under pressure. They're not spinning their wheels. They've built systems that move on their behalf. Think of a tree. It doesn't chase the sun all day. It simply roots itself deeply, and the sun's path does the work for it. That's leverage in nature. So too in our lives, when we position ourselves correctly, much of the work begins to happen without us constantly forcing it. Here's the challenge though. Leverage requires patience. It means stepping back from the urgent grind and asking bigger questions. It means building habits that don't pay off immediately, but create exponential returns later. Plato said the beginning is the most important part of the work. When you choose leverage over effort, you're focusing on beginnings on foundations that will carry the weight for years to come. This might mean automating part of your routine, delegating tasks, learning a skill that multiplies your future value, or building relationships that open doors later. These moves take time, but their payoff is far greater than simply working longer hours today. Let's be honest, effort feels good in the moment. It makes you feel productive, like you're fighting the good fight. But effort without direction is like running on a treadmill. It burns energy but doesn't move you forward. Leverage, on the other hand, often feels uncomfortable at first. It forces you to let go of control, to trust systems, to value patience over adrenaline. But once you taste the freedom it gives you, you realize this is what power has always been about. Power is not in sweating the small stuff. It's in setting up the stage so that the small stuff handles itself. So how do you start thinking in leverage? Begin by asking yourself one simple question every day. What one action, if done now, would make everything else easier or irrelevant? If you answer that honestly, you'll see where the true hinges are. It might be learning a new tool that saves hours of repetitive work. It might be setting a clear boundary that eliminates constant interruptions. It might be delegating something you've been holding on to out of fear. The point is not to do more. The point is to find the lever. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, if it is not useful, discard it. The wisdom here is ruthless. Cut what drains you. Invest in what multiplies you. And once you begin to live this way, something powerful happens. You shift from being a worker to being an architect. Workers execute. Architects design. A worker might move bricks all day. An architect designs a bridge that moves thousands across a river for generations. Who holds the greater power? That's the choice you face every day. Will you keep grinding harder, hoping your sweat buys you respect? Or will you step back, see the bigger picture, and build systems that command respect because they outlast you? At the heart of Stoicism is this truth. We cannot control everything, but we can control where we put our energy. If your energy goes into endless effort, you'll always feel trapped. If your energy goes into leverage, you'll feel free. Stop suffering under the weight of unnecessary effort. Build leverage. Choose the hinge, not the mountain. Because power doesn't belong to the one who pushes the hardest. It belongs to the one who knows where to push. Habit 3, speak less, observe more. Most people don't realize how much they give away when they open their mouths. The urge to fill silence with words is strong because silence makes us uncomfortable. We think that by talking we prove our intelligence, our presence, or our value. But often the opposite is true. The more we speak, the more room there is for others to dismiss, misunderstand, or even use our words against us. The wise have always known this. That's why one of the first marks of real power isn't what you say, it's what you hold back. The Stoics practice this kind of restraint constantly. Think about the people who draw your attention the most. Are they the ones who never stop talking, filling every pause with chatter? Or are they the ones who say little, but when they do, every word seems to hang in the air, demanding to be heard? Words lose value when they're thrown around carelessly. But when they are used sparingly, they feel like rare coins. Each one deliberate, each one worth something. Observation is a form of power people underestimate. While others rush to explain themselves, justify their actions, or defend their egos, the quiet person is watching. You're noticing how someone's hands twitch when they're lying, how their eyes dart when they're nervous, how their tone softens when they want approval. These details are invisible to the loud, but crystal clear to the observant. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This isn't just advice about being polite. It's a strategy for power. Listening twice as much means you collect twice the information while revealing half as much about yourself. Silence also creates mystery, and mystery creates influence. When people can't easily read you, they project onto you. They start wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, and whether you know something they don't. And in that wondering, your presence grows heavier. Your words should be like sharp blades, few in number, but impossible to ignore. But for those words to cut deeply, they must be surrounded by silence that gives them weight. The temptation to talk too much often comes from insecurity. We try to prove ourselves with explanations, with endless details, with stories meant to impress. But power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't rush to fill every space. It stands calm and measured. Think of the moments when you've been in a room and someone fell completely silent. People leaned in. The silence was more commanding than any speech. That's the energy powerful people cultivate. Plato once said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something." The challenge then is to train yourself to wait until your words add value, not just noise. Let's bring this into everyday life. You're in a meeting at work. Everyone is scrambling, arguing, throwing out ideas. Most people want to be the first to talk so they appear smart. But imagine you sit back, watching quietly, letting everyone else reveal their thoughts. When the room grows tired of noise, you speak one clear sentence that reframes the entire discussion. Who do you think will be remembered? The one who spoke constantly or the one who spoke with impact? Silence combined with observation builds authority because it positions you as the one who sees what others miss. Observation also trains your mind to slow down. When you stop rushing to speak, you notice patterns others overlook. The way someone always interrupts when they feel insecure, the way another avoids eye contact when they're hiding something. These small signals tell you more about reality than any speech ever could. But knowing others comes from this same principle, being present enough to see rather than rushing to respond. The quiet observer learns more in minutes than the talkative do in hours. This doesn't mean silence is always the answer. Words are powerful tools, but only when used at the right time. Think of silence as sharpening the blade and speech as the strike. If you speak all the time, your strike's dull. But if you wait, watch, and prepare, your words land with force. Another benefit of silence is that it shifts the burden of revelation onto others. People reveal themselves quickly when they're allowed to talk unchecked. In fact, the more they talk, the more they give away fears, desires, insecurities, ambitions. All you have to do is stay silent and listen. That's how negotiators gain leverage, how leaders gain respect, and how ordinary people gain insight. If you can control the impulse to talk, you remain in power while others unable to stop themselves lose it. Consider how Stoicism teaches us to value what's within our control. We cannot control how others speak, but we can control how we respond. Silence is a form of control, a refusal to hand away your composure. So how do you practice this habit in real life? Start by cutting your sentences in half. Say what needs to be said and stop there. Remove fillers like "I think," "just," and "kind of." These words weaken your presence because they suggest uncertainty. Replace them with clarity. Also practice letting silence linger. When someone finishes speaking, don't rush to fill the pause. Wait. You'll be surprised how often people reveal more when silence stretches. It feels uncomfortable at first, but that discomfort is where power grows. Picture this. Two people debating. One interrupts constantly, their voice loud, their arguments scattered. The other listens calmly, waits, and when the noise dies down, delivers one precise statement that silences the room. Which one holds power? The answer is obvious. Power doesn't shout. It whispers at the right time. It watches while others stumble over their own words. That's what it means to speak less and observe more. And remember, silence isn't emptiness. It's space. space to think, to calculate, to understand. It's the same space the Stoics sought in their practice of reflection. Epictetus urged his students to pause before reacting, to let reason step in before impulse. Silence is that pause. It's the moment between stimulus and response where wisdom grows. If you master that, your words become rare treasures instead of common noise. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to never speak. It's to make your words count, to turn them into tools that cut through confusion instead of adding to it. By speaking less, you give your voice weight. By observing more, you see reality as it is. And by combining the two, you embody the kind of power that doesn't need to be announced. It's felt. Habit 4. Be feared for the unknown. People often believe that fear comes from displays of aggression, from loud voices, or from constant reminders of strength. But the truth is, the deepest kind of fear doesn't come from what is obvious. It comes from what cannot be predicted. It's the unknown that unsettles us, the possibility of what might be waiting behind the curtain. Think about it. When you watch a thunderstorm roll in, it's not the strike you see that terrifies you, but the rumble of thunder that tells you another strike could come at any moment. This is the psychology of mystery. What people cannot measure, they cannot control. And when they can't control you, they start to fear you. Carl Jung explained it in another way. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. When you know yourself, your strengths, your limits, your hidden edges, you no longer need to put everything on display. Instead, you can choose what to show and what to hold back. Others, seeing only fragments, begin to sense there is more beneath the surface. Their minds project possibilities, and those projections often overshoot reality. The mystery of what you might do becomes larger than anything you actually do. This is the paradox of fear. It grows strongest in silence and shadow. Think of leaders, generals, or even athletes who are remembered not just for their victories, but for their unpredictability. The strategist who doesn't always strike back, who sometimes waits, sometimes ignores, sometimes retaliates with force. This unpredictability forces opponents to hesitate. They don't know which version of you they'll face. And hesitation is the first crack in anyone's armor. In everyday life, you can practice this habit by simply not explaining everything. We live in a culture obsessed with over-communication, explaining feelings, clarifying every move, correcting every rumor. But the more you explain, the more predictable you become. Imagine if instead of defending yourself against gossip, you let the story float unanswered. People are left to wonder if the silence means acceptance, rejection, or something they can't grasp. That wondering gives you power. The moment you clarify every detail, the mystery disappears, and with it the influence. Aristotle once said, "The more you know, the more you realize you don't know," and it works in reverse too. The less others know about you, the more they assume. That assumption often makes them cautious, respectful, even fearful. The goal here is not deception for the sake of manipulation, but selective revelation. You show enough to establish presence, but never enough to be fully mapped out. Like a chess player, you reveal pieces slowly, never letting your opponent see the full strategy until it's too late. Let's imagine a scenario. You're in a disagreement. The average person would rush to argue, defend themselves, or lash out. But instead, you pause. You let silence settle. You let your lack of reaction hang in the air. Suddenly, the other person is caught in their own mind, replaying what they said, second-guessing how you'll respond. They might even soften their tone, not because you demanded it, but because your silence created a space where they fear what could come next. This is the essence of Stoic composure. It uses stillness as a weapon, forcing others to battle their own imagination. When you hold yourself back, you create a shadow that others respect, even if they can't name why. They fear stepping too close because they don't know if your next move will bring warmth or fire. And that uncertainty creates distance, which often works in your favor. In relationships too, mystery changes dynamics. If you are constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly making yourself an open book, people stop valuing your presence. But when you sometimes pull back, when you leave things unsaid, people notice. They become curious. They wonder about your silence. They sense there is more beneath the surface. And that sensing keeps their respect alive. As Seneca said, "It is better to be despised for simplicity than to be tormented by continual pretenses." Mystery isn't about faking. It's about simplicity. Knowing when to withhold and letting that restraint build strength. Carl Jung also warned us about the dangers of transparency without boundaries. He wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. By embracing your own depths, you realize you don't owe every part of yourself to the world. You keep some things hidden, not out of shame, but out of strategy. This distance doesn't weaken connection. It strengthens it by preventing others from thinking they have full access to you. And when people don't have full access, they tread carefully. Now it's important to make something clear. Being feared for the unknown is not about cruelty. It's not about scaring people for pleasure or holding power just to dominate. It's about creating respect through unpredictability. Picture a lion resting in the grass. It doesn't roar at every passing sound. It doesn't chase every movement. It waits calm and quiet. And because of that calm, every creature around it is alert, cautious, careful. They don't know when or if it will strike. That's how your presence should feel. Quiet enough to keep people guessing. Strong enough that when you do act, it leaves no doubt. So how do you build this habit? Start by practicing restraint. Stop correcting every misunderstanding. Stop rushing to explain your side. Stop giving every detail of your life away. Let some things remain unsaid. Then pair that restraint with moments of decisive action. When you finally choose to act, make it sharp and clear so people realize the silence was never emptiness. It was power in reserve. Over time, this balance builds a reputation. People know you're not to be taken lightly, not because you're loud, but because you're unpredictable. In the end, mystery is a kind of armor. It keeps people from assuming they have control over you. It forces them to respect boundaries they cannot see. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to rise above noise and distraction, to live with clarity, and to remain unshaken by the world. To be feared for the unknown is simply to embody this Stoic truth. You don't need to prove everything. You only need to carry yourself in such a way that people hesitate before testing you. And here lies the paradox. When you embrace mystery, you actually gain more peace. You're no longer exhausting yourself trying to explain, defend, or prove. You move quietly. Let others wonder and keep your energy for what truly matters. In this way, mystery is not just a source of fear for others. It's a source of freedom for you. Habit 5. Make yourself scarce and irreplaceable. Most of us grow up being told that availability is kindness. Be there for people. Answer quickly. Always say yes when someone asks for your time. On the surface, that sounds generous, even noble. But over time, you discover the darker side of this habit. The more accessible you make yourself, the less people value you. The more you give, the more they assume you'll always be there. And suddenly, instead of being respected, you're taken for granted. What was once generosity becomes expectation. And what was once your energy becomes someone else's entitlement. The Stoics warned against this trap of overextension. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others when you do not refer your thoughts to some object of common utility." In other words, guard your time, guard your presence. Because the more scarce you make yourself, the more valuable you become. Think about it in simple terms. If something is everywhere, people stop noticing it. Water flowing from a tap is rarely appreciated until the day it's cut off. Gold is prized precisely because it is scarce. The same principle applies to you. If people can always call, always message, always demand your attention, then your presence loses its weight. But if your time is rationed, if your attention is precious, people treat it with reverence. If you're always accessible, you are letting others waste what is most limited, your life itself. Scarcity, though, is only half of the equation. To be powerful, you must also be irreplaceable. Scarcity makes people want you. Irreplaceability makes them need you. The people who hold the most influence in life are those who cultivate a skill, a strength, or a perspective that no one else around them can replicate. Picture a workplace. One person replies to every email instantly, attends every meeting, tries to do everything for everyone. The other person guards their time, but delivers something no one else can. Insights that solve problems, strategies that shape direction, or skills that no one else has mastered. When decisions are made, which one is missed if absent? Not the person who was always present, but replaceable, but the one who is scarce and yet indispensable. This is the formula. Availability plus replaceability equals weakness. Scarcity plus irreplaceability equals power. The Stoics believed in self-mastery, and this is what scarcity truly is. Mastery over your own time and energy. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Sometimes guarding your time will make others think you are cold, detached, or even arrogant. But their judgment doesn't matter. What matters is your growth, your focus, your discipline. If you are always giving yourself away, you will never have enough left to sharpen your own edge. Scarcity is the courage to say no, not out of cruelty, but out of commitment to something greater. Irreplaceability, on the other hand, comes from depth. The world is full of generalists, people who dabble in everything but master nothing. Powerful people go deep. They choose one skill, one craft, one ability, and they refine it until it becomes their signature. Aristotle wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. By pursuing excellence in one area, you separate yourself from the crowd. And once separated, you become the person others cannot imagine operating without. That's how reputations are built. And that's how power solidifies. Now, this doesn't mean you need to withdraw completely from people. Scarcity isn't about isolation. It's about being intentional. It's about deciding when to be present and when to step back. The beginning here is your boundary. You decide when to answer, when to show up, and when to hold back. When people know your presence is not guaranteed, they begin to treat it as a privilege rather than a right. Imagine this in personal relationships. If you're always available, always the first to text, always the one to bend your schedule, people subconsciously stop respecting your time. They may care about you, but they do not value your presence the same way. But when you step back, when you become a little harder to reach, people notice. They start to think before calling. They weigh their words more carefully. And when you do show up, it feels like something meaningful, not routine. This is how scarcity protects dignity and commands respect. Let's also consider the subtle psychology at play. When someone is always available, others assume they have nothing better to do. It diminishes their perceived value. But when someone is harder to reach, others assume they must be busy with important things, and so their value increases. This is why powerful people are not constantly seen in every room, at every gathering, in every conversation. They appear rarely, but when they do, people pay attention. Their presence is scarce and therefore priceless. Scarcity without value is simply absence. Scarcity paired with contribution is power. When people know that your presence brings clarity, insight, or unique ability, they crave it. When they also know that presence is limited, they revere it. This balance creates untouchability. So how can you start practicing this habit? Begin by noticing how often you give your time away without thought. Do you reply instantly to every message? Do you say yes to every request? Do you stretch yourself thin to be present everywhere? If so, start cutting back, delay responses, decline invitations that don't matter. Spend time building one skill that truly sets you apart. Remember, scarcity without substance is emptiness, but scarcity with depth is power. In the end, becoming scarce and irreplaceable is about living with intention. It's about refusing to waste yourself on constant availability and instead building depth that others cannot ignore. Scarcity makes people want you. Irreplaceability makes them need you. Combined, they make you untouchable. This is not arrogance. It's wisdom. It's the wisdom of the Stoics who knew that to live fully, you must live deliberately, not endlessly, at the mercy of others. Habit 6. Keep allies close, but controlled. Most people treat friendships and alliances as if they're sacred bonds that should never be questioned. We're told to trust unconditionally, to forgive endlessly, to always put relationships first. But life often teaches us the opposite truth. Sometimes the very people we lean on the hardest become the ones who hold us back the most. Sometimes loyalty turns into dependency, and instead of lifting us, it chains us. Power doesn't grow in dependency. Power grows in clarity. The Stoics knew this well. Think of it like this. A good ally is like a bridge. They connect you to opportunities, to insight, to strength. But if you lean too hard on that bridge without maintaining your own balance, it can collapse beneath you. That collapse can cost you everything. We've all seen the dangers of leaning too heavily on others. The colleague who always seeks validation from their boss ends up controlled by approval. The friend who depends too much on the group becomes the one no one respects. The leader who clings to allies for confidence is easily manipulated. When your allies become your leash, you are no longer in control. And control, as the Stoics remind us, is the heart of freedom. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. Stoicism doesn't teach cold withdrawal. It teaches balance. Relationships are necessary. No one achieves anything great alone. But alliances must be intentional. A powerful person praises their allies openly, strengthening the bond and encouraging loyalty. But they also observe quietly, always asking, is this alliance still serving my growth? If not, they adjust. They step back. They set boundaries. Or when necessary, they cut ties. Aristotle said, "A friend to all is a friend to none." The meaning is clear. You cannot treat every relationship as sacred. You must distinguish between those who truly align with your values and those who only drain your strength. Think about history's most effective leaders. They all had allies, but they never became prisoners of them. They understood that alliances are tools for growth and stability, not permanent lifelines. The great strategist doesn't hold on to every bond forever. They keep the ones that push them forward and let go of the ones that pull them back. The beginning of any alliance then is clarity. Why am I connecting with this person? What value do we bring to each other? Without clarity, emotion takes over and emotion clouds judgment. The Stoics also believed in the power of detachment. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't cling. When you praise someone publicly, you build goodwill. When you cut ties privately, you preserve dignity. This balance keeps your reputation intact while protecting your energy. Let's take this into daily life. Imagine you have a friend who often supports you, but also drains your energy with constant negativity. The average person tolerates it endlessly, believing loyalty means never saying no. The powerful person, however, sets limits. They still support their friend, but they don't allow themselves to be dragged down. They decide when to give their time and when to step back. This is not cruelty. It's wisdom. It ensures the relationship remains useful instead of destructive. In work environments, this principle is even clearer. Leaders who give away all their trust unconditionally often end up betrayed. But those who balance trust with observation, who support their team while keeping authority intact, build respect. Their allies remain close, but never in control. Powerful people understand another key truth. The fewer emotional dependencies you have, the freer you are to act. When you can walk away from an alliance without collapsing, you hold the upper hand. And because you don't lean too heavily, people respect you more. They know you choose them not because you need them, but because you want them. That choice makes your presence more meaningful. But let's not mistake strategy for coldness. Stoicism teaches virtue, justice, courage, wisdom, self-control. Real alliances are built on these virtues. A useful ally is not just someone who benefits you, but someone who helps you grow in alignment with these principles. So how do you keep allies close, but controlled? Start by observing. Watch how people act when you succeed. When you fail, when you disagree, do they celebrate you genuinely, or do they grow distant? Do they support you quietly, or do they only show up for recognition? Observation tells you who deserves closeness. Then set boundaries. Don't allow every demand. Don't give away every secret. Don't tie your worth to their approval. Praise them when they do well, but if they cross the line, address it in private, firmly, and without drama. This balance creates both loyalty and respect. And when the time comes to cut ties, do it with dignity. Don't destroy, don't broadcast, don't create noise. Simply step back, remove their influence, and continue forward. People notice this strength. They see that you can walk away cleanly, and it makes them treat your bond more carefully. Young observed, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Many avoid letting go of toxic allies because it forces them to face their own fears of being alone. But facing that fear makes you stronger, and it ensures your allies remain allies, not masters. At the end of the day, keeping allies close but controlled is about balance. It's about honoring the role of relationships while never sacrificing your independence. Allies should strengthen you, not weaken you. They should support your mission, not replace it. And above all, they should never become your leash. Power is not about isolation, but it's not about blind loyalty either. It's about building connections with purpose, maintaining control over your own path, and ensuring that every relationship you nurture brings you closer to strength rather than further into weakness. Habit 7. Expect betrayal before it happens. It's one of the hardest truths to accept. The people closest to you today may not stand beside you tomorrow. Life shifts, circumstances change, ambition grows, and in those shifts, loyalty can fracture. Most of us don't want to face this. We'd rather believe that friendships are permanent, that alliances last forever, that once someone has shown us loyalty, it will never fade. But reality is less comforting. History, philosophy, and even our own experiences remind us that betrayal is not an exception. It's a recurring pattern. The Stoics, ever grounded in realism, warned against placing blind faith in people. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." He didn't write this to make us cynical. He wrote it to prepare us. To accept betrayal as a possibility is not to distrust everyone. It's to protect your peace when it eventually comes. Sometimes growth keeps two people aligned. Other times it pushes them apart. A friend may cheer for you at one stage of your life, but secretly resent you at another. A partner in business may stand firm until opportunity tempts them elsewhere. These shifts don't always mean malice. They often mean that circumstances pulled them in another direction. If you expect loyalty to remain unchanged, you set yourself up for shock. But if you anticipate change, you can adapt before it breaks you. Greed, envy, and desire can corrode even the strongest bonds. Someone who seemed content yesterday may crave more tomorrow. And in that craving, they may betray the hand that once fed them. When you recognize that betrayal is often born from human weakness, not just malice, you stop personalizing it. You stop making it about you. You start seeing it as part of the landscape of life, something to expect, prepare for, and rise above. So how do you live with this knowledge without becoming paranoid? The answer lies in awareness. Paranoia is a constant fear that eats away at your peace. Awareness is a calm watchfulness that prepares you without consuming you. Practical wisdom here is simple. Scan for signs, not obsessively, not fearfully, but carefully. Watch for hesitation when commitment is needed. Notice when messages are delayed without reason. Pay attention when someone forms new alliances quietly without involving you. These are not always betrayals, but they are signals. Signals worth logging. The powerful don't overreact to every signal. They simply record them, prepare alternatives, and build resilience. Aristotle reminded us the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If one part of your circle fails, your whole life should not collapse. That's why preparation is everything. By having alternatives, you ensure that the betrayal of one person doesn't destroy the structure you've built. Think of a general in war. He doesn't assume every ally will stay loyal until the end. He anticipates desertions, prepares fallback positions, and builds multiple supply lines. If betrayal comes, he is already 3 steps ahead. Life works the same way. Don't depend so completely on one person, one relationship, or one alliance that losing it would leave you helpless. Diversify your trust and keep your foundation strong within yourself. There's also a deep freedom in expecting betrayal. It loosens the grip of disappointment. You stop asking, "How could they do this to me?" and start saying, "I saw this as a possibility and I'm prepared." This mindset transforms pain into resilience. The Stoics trained themselves in what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They rehearsed difficulties before they arrived. They imagined loss, betrayal, failure, so that when these arrived, they were not shattered. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He did not live in fear but in readiness. You can do the same. Now let's consider what happens when betrayal actually arrives. The average person reacts with rage, with loud accusations, with endless explanations. But reaction only reveals weakness. The powerful, on the other hand, move with calm. They've already built their alternatives. They've already expected this. Their silence unsettles the betrayer more than shouting ever could. If you suffer endlessly in anticipation, you double the pain. But if you prepare, you suffer less when it comes, because you've already rehearsed your response. There's another layer to this truth. Sometimes betrayal liberates you. Sometimes the loss of false loyalty clears the space for stronger bonds. Plato believed that truth emerges when we strip away illusions. Writing, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Betrayal shines a harsh light. It forces you to see who truly stood beside you and who was only there for their own comfort. As painful as it feels, that light is cleansing. It removes illusions and leaves you with reality. And reality is always stronger than illusion. In your personal life, this habit of expecting betrayal teaches you to set healthy boundaries. You stop giving away too much of yourself too quickly. You stop tying your worth to someone else's loyalty. You build your confidence on your own foundation. Imagine this in practice. You're building a business with a partner. Instead of trusting blindly, you document agreements. You prepare exit plans. You build systems that survive even if the partnership ends, or in friendships, instead of expecting people to always remain the same. You accept that growth may pull you apart. You cherish the bond while it lasts, but prepare for the day it may not. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. You love fully, but without illusion. You connect deeply, but without chains. In the end, expecting betrayal before it happens is not about suspicion. It's about preparation. It's about protecting your inner world from being shattered when outer relationships falter. So ask yourself, are you preparing for the possibility of betrayal, or are you pretending it will never come? Because if you're unprepared, betrayal can break you. But if you expect it, if you've built resilience, it becomes just another event, a setback, not a collapse. The Stoics remind us that strength is not about avoiding hardship, but about meeting it with composure. Expect betrayal. Prepare for it, and you'll find that when it comes, you're not the victim of it. You're already beyond it. Habit 8. React slow, strike clean. One of the hardest things for most people to control is their first reaction. An insult stings and the words fly out before you've even thought about them. A provocation cuts and your body surges with adrenaline, demanding you fight back instantly. We live in a culture that almost encourages this. Clap back, don't let anyone disrespect you. Always defend yourself. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The person who reacts quickly almost always loses. Why? Because when you react instantly, you're not thinking. You're being controlled. The person who provoked you owns your emotions. And in that moment, they own you. The Stoics understood this trap well. When you learn to pause, something remarkable happens. You step out of the grip of impulse and into the space of choice. The weak let others dictate their tone, their energy, and their peace. The strong slow everything down. They let silence do the heavy lifting while they gather themselves. And when the time comes to respond, it's not noise, it's precision. Carl Jung explored this idea through the lens of the psyche. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Your quick reactions often reveal more about you than about the one who provoked you. That sharp comment that cuts so deeply. It wouldn't sting if it didn't touch something raw inside you. The instant anger that boils up, it tells you where your ego is fragile. By reacting slowly, you give yourself the chance to examine that irritation instead of broadcasting it. You turn an insult into information. You transform provocation into insight. And in doing so, you rob your enemy of power. Think about the image of a swordmaster. A beginner swings wildly, every emotion written on their face, every strike uncontrolled. But the master, he stands still, calm, silent. His blade doesn't flinch at every movement. He waits, he studies. And then with one swift, precise strike, he ends the fight. That's the difference between weakness and strength, between overreaction and control. Control yourself and you control the outcome. Lose yourself and you hand victory to the other side. We see this play out in everyday life. Someone cuts you off in traffic and your instinct is to shout to slam the horn. But what does that change? Nothing. You give them your peace, your energy, and maybe even your safety. A colleague undermines you in a meeting and your urge is to argue immediately to prove yourself. But if you wait, observe, and then choose your words carefully, your calmness makes their noise look foolish. A friend makes a cutting remark, you want to fire back. But if you pause and smile instead, their comment dissolves under the weight of your composure. Silence paired with a clean strike when necessary always wins. Aristotle once said, "Anybody can become angry." That is easy. But to be angry with the right person to the right degree, at the right time for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. That's exactly what we're talking about. Anger itself isn't the enemy. Quick, sloppy anger is controlled anger sharpened into deliberate action is what creates respect. People may mock an emotional outburst, but they never forget cold precision. This habit, react slow, strike clean, doesn't mean you let people walk over you. Quite the opposite. It means you build a reputation for being dangerous, but in a way that no one can predict. When people see that they cannot bait you, that you won't rise to every insult, they grow uneasy. They wonder what will happen if I push too far. What will the response look like when it finally comes? That uncertainty creates a fear that yelling never could. Plato once wrote, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." In mastering your reactions, you conquer yourself. And once you've done that, others can't conquer you. Let's ground this in practice. The next time you're insulted, don't respond immediately. Count your breath. Let the silence hang. Watch how uncomfortable the other person becomes as they realize you're not playing their game. Then, if you choose to respond, do it calmly and decisively. One line sharp enough to close the conversation. No long explanations, no pleading, just clarity. Or consider betrayal in business. Don't explode in rage. Log the offense. Wait, and when the moment is right, deliver your consequence cleanly. A contract cut, an opportunity withdrawn, a door closed, cold, quiet, final. Think also about how this habit shapes reputation. A person who reacts emotionally to every challenge becomes predictable. Everyone knows how to push their buttons, how to make them lose control. But a person who reacts slowly, who studies the situation before striking, is unpredictable. Their restraint becomes legendary, their eventual action unforgettable. Even in personal relationships, this habit is life-changing. Arguments often spiral, not because of what was said, but because of how quickly it was answered. Words spoken in heat create wounds that linger for years. But when you pause, when you take a moment to breathe, to think, to measure, you save yourself from regret. Your words become cleaner, kinder when needed, sharper when required. Either way, they become tools of clarity rather than weapons of chaos. And here's the paradox. People respect you more when you don't rush to defend yourself. They see strength in your calmness. They sense weight in your silence. They feel the authority in your composure. Habit 9. Control the frame. Most people think winning a conversation comes from who has the best argument or who speaks with the loudest voice. But the truth is, most arguments are won before they even begin. The real battle isn't over the details. It's over the frame. Whoever controls the frame decides the rules of engagement. They decide what matters and what doesn't, what gets attention and what gets ignored. It's like walking into a game and being the one who quietly sets the board. Everyone else may think they're playing, but they're playing by your rules. The Stoics understood this subtle form of power well. Think of how often you've been pulled into someone else's frame without realizing it. Maybe you're accused of something unfair, and instead of questioning the accusation, you rush to defend yourself. At that moment, the other person already won. They set the frame that you're guilty and must explain. Or maybe someone asks you a loaded question, and you answer it directly only to realize later that answering you validated their assumptions. Power comes from stepping back, pausing, and asking yourself, whose frame am I in right now? And more importantly, how can I shift it back to mine? Most people unconsciously accept whatever frame is given to them. They get dragged into debates that don't matter, defending points that weaken them, wasting energy where none is needed. But once you become conscious of the frame, you can redirect it. Instead of answering accusations, you can reframe the issue. That's not the real question here. The real question is this. Suddenly, the energy shifts. Instead of being pulled into their game, you've placed them into yours. Control of the frame isn't only verbal, it's also physical. Your body sets the context long before your words arrive. Someone who fidgets, avoids eye contact, or rushes their speech frames themselves as uncertain. Someone who holds steady, who lets silence stretch, who speaks slowly and deliberately frames themselves as in control. Sometimes it looks like stillness. The courage to hold a gaze, to pause when everyone else rushes, to let the weight of your silence frame the entire room. Think of a courtroom. Lawyers don't just argue facts, they argue frames. One frames the defendant as reckless, another as misunderstood. The jury doesn't decide on pure facts. They decide within the frame they've been given. Life works the same way. People rarely make choices based on truth alone. They choose based on how the truth is presented. Plato believed that the measure of a man is what he does with power. To control the frame is one of the purest expressions of power, not through domination, but through quiet direction. Everyday situations give you opportunities to practice this. A colleague challenges your idea. Instead of defending your position nervously, you might say, "I don't think the question is whether this works. The real issue is how fast we can implement it." You've shifted the frame from doubt to strategy. Or someone tries to provoke you in an argument. Instead of responding emotionally, you say calmly, "That's not what this conversation is about." Instantly, you've pulled the energy away from their chaos and back into your clarity. Another piece of this habit is pace. The person who controls the tempo controls the room. If you rush, you signal weakness. If you slow down, you set the rhythm. Aristotle said, "Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet." When you slow your pace, when you let the room adjust to you, you're not just buying time. You're subtly teaching others to move at your speed. That alone shifts the frame in your favor. But controlling the frame doesn't mean being manipulative for the sake of manipulation. Stoicism teaches virtue, justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance. These are the anchors for how you use the frame. You don't twist reality to deceive. You frame reality to bring clarity. Let's not forget the role of silence. Silence is one of the strongest frames of all. When you don't rush to respond, when you let words hang in the air, people lean into the silence searching for meaning. They start to fill in the blanks themselves. That's when mystery works in your favor. Silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It frames you as someone who doesn't need noise to be powerful. Consider the opposite. When someone loses control of the frame, they argue endlessly. They raise their voice. They let their emotions dictate the conversation. The more they shout, the weaker they look. The frame slips from their hands. People remember not the logic of their words, but the desperation of their delivery. Meanwhile, the quiet one, the one who redefined the issue and spoke calmly, becomes the authority in the room. This is why controlling the frame is often about less, not more. Less talking, less defending, more redirecting, more stillness. So how do you train this habit? Start small. The next time you're drawn into an argument, pause before you answer. Ask yourself, what is the frame here? Do I need to accept it, or can I shift it? Practice redirecting with simple phrases. That's not the point. Here's what matters. The real issue is this. Practice body language. Sit calmly. Hold eye contact. Let your tone drop rather than rise. These subtle cues speak louder than any shouted words. At its core, controlling the frame is about freedom. The freedom to define how you engage. The freedom to protect your energy. The freedom to ensure that others cannot drag you into their chaos. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily in his meditations, returning again and again to perspective. Perspective is the ultimate frame. If you set it yourself, no one else can steal it. In the end, power isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about quietly shaping the space so that everyone else follows your rhythm. The person who controls the frame wins before the argument even begins. They don't waste energy proving themselves. They don't get lost in noise. They set the context, and the context shapes the outcome. That's why when you learn to control the frame, you stop fighting for influence. You become the influence. Habit 10. Operate in shadows, reward in public. Most people have the urge to broadcast every move they make. They share their goals before they've taken the first step. They announce their plans before they've proven themselves. In the modern world, it's almost expected. You have to show what you're doing, prove you're working, let everyone know how busy you are. But here's the problem. When you expose your strategies too soon, you weaken them. You invite interference, criticism, and sometimes even sabotage. Power doesn't move in the open. Power builds quietly like roots spreading under the soil. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Broadcasting your every move places your power outside of you. Operating in shadows keeps it where it belongs, within your hands. Think of how nature operates. Seeds don't announce themselves while buried underground. They grow silently, hidden from sight, until the day they break through the surface with undeniable strength. Strategy works the same way. But here's the paradox. While your planning must remain hidden, your generosity should be loud. When you operate in silence and then deliver rewards in public, you create a reputation that multiplies itself. Seneca said, "Wherever there's a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Public rewards are a form of strategic kindness. By giving credit to others openly, you build loyalty. You show that you are not threatened by the success of those around you. Instead, you amplify it. And because you do so sparingly and intentionally, it makes people crave your recognition even more. History is filled with examples of leaders who mastered this balance. They planned in secret, made moves behind closed doors, and then stepped into the light only to reward, not to boast. Think of a general who studies maps quietly at night, choosing battles no one else sees coming, and then the next morning praises his soldiers publicly for the victory. The soldiers are loyal, not because they know the general's every move, but because they know he will honor them when it counts. When you give rewards in public, you make the parts feel essential, and together they build something far greater than you could alone. In daily life, this principle is just as powerful. Consider a workplace. If you constantly talk about what you're planning, your new projects, your strategies, people start expecting results before you're ready. And if you fail, you lose credibility. But if you work quietly, deliver results, and then praise your team publicly, you gain both authority and loyalty. Or in personal life, think of friendships. Constantly telling people your plans often leads to skepticism or envy. But keeping things quiet, then showing up with results, builds respect. And when you celebrate others along the way, you become someone they admire and want to stay close to. Operating in shadows also teaches patience. It forces you to focus on building rather than on impressing. It's easy to post about effort. It's harder to quietly commit until results speak for themselves. Beginnings are fragile. If you expose them too early, they can be crushed under doubt and scrutiny. But when guarded in silence, they gain strength until they can stand on their own. Protect your beginnings. Let them grow in darkness and reveal them only when they're ready to thrive in light. And then when you do step into the light, don't use it to glorify yourself. Use it to glorify others. Public rewards are powerful because they shape reputation. When you give credit openly, you create an atmosphere where people want to work with you, where loyalty grows not from fear, but from admiration. Epictetus taught, "He who seeks wisdom is wise already." By rewarding others in public, you show wisdom. You show that your focus isn't only on yourself, but on the bigger picture. And in return, people see you as someone worth following. Imagine this in practice. You're leading a small team. You've been quietly strategizing a new approach for weeks without talking about it at every corner. When the plan succeeds, instead of taking all the credit, you praise your team in front of others. Suddenly, they're motivated. They feel seen. They work harder. And yet, no one doubts who orchestrated the success. You. This dual reputation of being both mysterious in planning and generous in reward makes you magnetic. People respect your silence and crave your recognition. Seneca warned us about the danger of seeking approval too quickly. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Broadcasting your strategies is often just craving approval before it's earned. The Stoic way is different. Work in stillness. Let your actions prove themselves and let recognition flow outward, not inward. In that balance, you become untouchable. Even body language reflects this habit. When you sit quietly in meetings observing while others scramble to showcase their ideas, you frame yourself as someone who sees more than they say. Then when you finally speak, you elevate others. Your silence makes your words powerful, and your generosity makes them loyal. That combination builds a reputation that no one can easily challenge. So how do you build this habit? First, practice restraint. Resist the urge to share your plans too early. Let your results do the speaking. Second, practice observation. Learn to build in silence to notice details others overlook while they're busy announcing themselves. Finally, practice generosity. When you succeed, praise others publicly. This doesn't cost you power. It multiplies it. People will begin to crave your approval more than they crave rewards from anyone else. At the end of the day, operating in shadows and rewarding in public is about balance. Silence protects your strategies. Generosity strengthens your reputation. Combined, they create a presence that is both mysterious and magnetic. Habit 11. Reinvent quietly. Most people love to announce their changes before they've even taken the first step. They'll post about a new habit, a new lifestyle, or a new identity long before the work is done. It gives them the satisfaction of being seen as someone who is changing, even if the change itself never comes. But here's the harsh truth. The ones who talk the loudest about transformation are often the ones who stay the same. Real power doesn't broadcast itself. Real transformation happens in silence where no one is watching. The Stoics knew this well. The weak plateau because they mistake attention for growth. They think that by announcing their intentions, they've already achieved something. But intentions are fragile. They fade when the applause fades. The powerful evolve differently. They sharpen themselves behind closed doors, away from noise and eyes. They change not because they want validation, but because they want mastery. Seneca captured this truth when he said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. The world doesn't need to hear about your reinvention. It needs to feel it when you walk into the room transformed." Carl Jung offered a psychological lens to this process. He said, "Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes?" Reinvention is not about what others see. It's about what you face within yourself. That quiet battle where you confront your own fears, your laziness, your ego. That's where real growth is forged. If you win there, you don't need to announce anything. By the time you step back into the world, the results speak louder than words ever could. People who knew you before will look twice, wondering when the shift happened. The mystery makes the transformation even more powerful. Think of how nature evolves. The caterpillar doesn't tell the world it's building a cocoon. It withdraws, disappears into silence, and transforms in darkness. When it returns, it is unrecognizable. That's how powerful reinvention works. Quietly, slowly, away from distractions. The Stoic practice of solitude mirrors this. Epictetus urged his students to withdraw often into themselves, not to escape the world, but to prepare for it. In solitude, they refined their character so that when they returned, they carried an inner strength that no applause could give and no criticism could take away. Too many people sabotage themselves by announcing change too soon. They declare, "I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to be different this year." And while the declarations feel empowering in the moment, they also set traps. People begin to watch, to judge, to expect. Pressure builds and often the person crumbles under it. But beginnings are fragile. Exposing them too early can destroy them. Protect your beginnings. Let them grow in silence until they're strong enough to stand without defense. Reinvention in silence is not only about protecting your progress, it's also about sharpening your unpredictability. If people think they know everything about you, they stop respecting you. They assume you are predictable, static, easy to read. But when you evolve quietly, you shatter their assumptions. By the time they think they have you figured out, you've already changed. That unpredictability builds a kind of fear and respect. They don't know what to expect from you anymore, and that makes them cautious. As Aristotle observed, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. When people realize they don't truly know you, they begin to handle you with care. Imagine someone who quietly spends 6 months mastering a new skill, public speaking, martial arts, financial strategy, without ever announcing it. Then one day, in a high-stakes situation, they reveal it naturally. No build-up, no watch-me speeches, just quiet competence that leaves everyone stunned. That's the kind of reinvention that shifts reputation. People stop underestimating you. They start watching you differently. And it's not because you told them you changed. It's because you showed them. Reinvention requires this. You must face the parts of yourself that no one else sees, the weaknesses, the patterns, the illusions you've lived under, and quietly dismantle them. This process isn't glamorous. It's uncomfortable, lonely, even painful at times. But that's why it works. You're not performing for anyone. You're stripping yourself down and building again, brick by brick in private. And when you return to the world, you're not seeking applause. You've already won the only approval that matters, your own. The Stoics often practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of hardship. They imagined failure, loss, and betrayal before they came. Why? To prepare their minds so that when hardship arrived, they weren't destroyed by it. Reinvention works in the same way. You rehearse new habits, new thoughts, new identities quietly without fanfare so that when life tests you, you respond differently than before. You don't need to tell the world you've changed. The world discovers it when you stay calm under fire. When you succeed where you once failed, when you refuse to break under pressure, even your silence becomes part of the reinvention. When people ask what you've been up to, you don't give them long explanations. You smile, you say little, you let results carry the weight. Silence creates mystery, and mystery amplifies respect. Seneca reminded us, it is quality rather than quantity that matters. A few silent results outweigh 1,000 noisy declarations. Consider how much time is wasted in explaining change instead of living it. Every post, every announcement, every new year, new me statement burns energy that could be used in actual growth. True transformation is too busy working to stop and explain itself. In practice, this means building habits without broadcasting them. You wake early and read before dawn, not to post about it, but to sharpen your mind. You train quietly in the gym, not to prove to others, but to strengthen your body. You study late at night, not for applause, but for mastery. And when the day comes that you reveal these results, no one saw them coming. The silence makes the impact even sharper. So why does this matter for power? Because predictability is weakness. If people can map your every move, they can control you. But if you reinvent quietly, you keep them guessing. You're no longer a fixed target. You're fluid, evolving, untouchable. At the end of the day, weak people plateau because they mistake noise for growth. The powerful evolve in silence. They sharpen new skills behind closed doors. They dismantle old patterns in solitude. And they return to the world not with promises, but with proof. By the time people notice, it's already too late to catch up. That's the secret of reinvention. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, undeniably, and it changes everything. Habit 12. Guard your time like a fortress. One of the easiest ways to measure a person's strength isn't by how much money they have or how loud their voice carries. It's by how they treat their time. Time is the one resource you can never buy back. Once it's gone forever. And yet, most people give it away like it's worthless. They hand over hours to people who don't deserve them, to conversations that lead nowhere, to distractions that leave them drained. The truth is, if you don't protect your time, you don't protect yourself. The Stoics were relentless about this fact. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He wasn't exaggerating. He was issuing a warning. Think of your time as a fortress. A fortress has walls, gates, guards, and rules about who gets in. Without those defenses, any intruder could stroll inside, take what they want, and leave you empty. Too many people live like an unguarded fortress. Their phone buzzes and they reply immediately. A stranger asks for a meeting and they say yes without thought. Their schedule is dictated not by their priorities, but by whoever gets to them first. That is not power. It's surrender. Power begins when you treat your calendar like your kingdom. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Becoming who you are requires time to think, to build, to create, to grow. If you give all your time away to others, you lose that privilege. You remain stuck endlessly responding to everyone else's agenda. Guarding your time isn't selfish. It's survival. It's how you protect the space needed to evolve into the person you're meant to be. Without it, you're just a servant in your own life. Imagine for a moment that your time is literal gold. Would you hand it out freely on the street? Would you let anyone walk into your home and scoop handfuls of coins from your safe? Of course not. But when you allow people to waste your hours, that's exactly what you're doing. In practical terms, guarding your time means learning to say no clearly, firmly, and without guilt. Most people struggle with this because they fear disappointing others. But here's the paradox. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter, you are saying no to something that does. You say no to your growth. You say no to your peace. You say no to your potential. If you repeatedly give your time away carelessly, mediocrity becomes your habit. But if you guard it carefully, excellence becomes your nature. There's also a psychological layer here. When you allow anyone to take your time, you teach them that your presence is cheap. But when you protect it, when you make people earn access, your presence becomes valuable. People respect what is rare. They respect what costs them effort to reach. That respect over time turns into authority. Look at leaders, thinkers, and creators who built legacies. They all had one thing in common, an almost ruthless protection of their hours. They filtered meetings, avoided idle chatter, and carved out solitude for deep work. Let's bring this into everyday life. How many times have you agreed to a meeting that could have been an email? How many times have you answered a phone call that drained you instead of helping you? How many times have you let notifications scatter your focus until the day slipped away? These little leaks don't seem like much, but over years they amount to a lifetime wasted. A powerful person doesn't let these leaks continue. They seal them one by one until their schedule is theirs again. Track how you spend your hours. Notice where they go. You may be shocked at how little is spent on what actually matters. Then begin filtering. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every message deserves an instant reply. Not every problem deserves your energy. Set boundaries. People will push back at first. They're used to easy access. But once they realize your time is no longer free, they'll adapt. Seneca warned, "If you do not set limits on your time, others will." And he was right. People will always try to use your time for their benefit. It's not always malicious. Sometimes they simply don't realize the cost. That's why it's your responsibility to set the limits, to decide who enters your fortress and when, to decide which battles are worth fighting and which distractions deserve silence. This isn't about arrogance. It's about clarity. There's another layer of power here. When your time is protected, your presence becomes sharper. If you only attend meetings that matter, your words carry more weight. If you only answer calls that are purposeful, your energy is stronger. If you only give hours to projects aligned with your mission, your results compound. The less you spread yourself thin, the more powerful each move becomes. This is the essence of leverage. Doing less but with greater impact. Guarding your time also reshapes how others see you. The person who is always available is taken for granted. The person who is selective becomes respected. When people know they cannot waste your hours, they approach you differently. They prepare before speaking. They value your presence. They hesitate before asking for your time. And that hesitation itself is respect. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to rise above distractions to keep his focus steady. Protecting your time is how you live that wisdom in action. So how do you start building this fortress? Begin small. Delay responses. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Schedule blocks of uninterrupted focus and treat them as sacred. Say no more often, not with excuses, but with clarity. That doesn't fit my priorities right now. Over time, these practices create walls around your time. Walls that keep out what is trivial and make space for what is essential. At the heart of Stoicism is the principle of control. Focus on what you can control and release the rest. You cannot control the passage of time, but you can control how you spend it. And in that choice lies your freedom. Guard your time like a fortress because it is your most valuable possession. If you let anyone stroll in, you surrender your kingdom. But if you protect it, if you treat each hour like gold, you build a life that others can only admire from outside the walls. Habit 13. Turn emotions into weapons. Most people believe power comes from suppressing emotion, from pretending not to feel. They think strength is about being cold, unshaken, untouched by anything life throws at them. But the truth is far more complex. Powerful people don't escape emotion. They embrace it. They feel the sting of anger, the heaviness of guilt, the ache of disappointment, the heat of shame. They feel it all, often more deeply than others. But the difference is simple. They don't let those emotions control them. They turn them into tools, into fuel, into weapons sharper than any sword. Anger is the easiest example. For most people, anger leads to outbursts. Shouting, snapping, reacting without thought. But anger, when held and shaped, becomes focus. It's the fire that pushes you to work harder, to prove doubters wrong, to stay disciplined when comfort tempts you. Carl Jung offered deep insight into this process. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What anxiety you reveals your values, your insecurities, even your hidden wounds. The weak deny this exploding or avoiding. The strong examine it. They ask, why does this provoke me? What does it teach me about myself? How can I use it?" By making the unconscious conscious, they strip anger of its power to enslave and instead turn it into a weapon of clarity. Pain works the same way. Life delivers losses, betrayals, failures. The average person drowns in them. They complain. They collapse. They become bitter. But the powerful turn pain into resilience. Seneca said, Difficulty strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Pain becomes training. Every setback becomes weight added to the barbell of the soul. And just like the body grows stronger by lifting heavier loads, the mind grows sharper by carrying heavier trials. What breaks others builds them. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they know pain is a tool. Shame and guilt are emotions most people try to bury, They deny them or they let them rot into self-hatred. But the powerful don't waste these feelings. They use them as reminders of where they went wrong, as lessons carved deep into memory. Shame can become that beginning if you let it guide you instead of consume you. Guilt becomes accountability. These emotions sting for a reason. They push you toward correction. Weakness lies in hiding from them. Strength lies in facing them and saying, "I will not make that mistake again." Think of how a blade is forged. It is beaten, burned, cooled, and beaten again. That process doesn't destroy it. It makes it unbreakable. Emotions are the fire and the hammer. The weak crumble in the heat. The powerful let the process shape them into something indestructible. Conquer yourself is to turn your raw emotions, even the darkest ones, into something useful, into a weapon that cuts through weakness. Let's bring this into real life. Someone insults you in public. Your first instinct is to snap back to defend your pride. But if you pause, if you let that sting fuel your composure instead, you come out stronger. You let silence hang, and in that silence the insult loses its power, or imagine betrayal by a friend. The hurt is deep, but instead of drowning in bitterness, you let that pain fuel boundaries, sharpen your judgment, and push you to build alliances more carefully. That's power. Not pretending it doesn't hurt, but refusing to let it break you. Most people live enslaved by emotions they don't even understand. They explode in anger and call it personality. They wallow in sadness and call it destiny. The powerful pull those forces into the light. They study them. They redirect them. They don't deny emotions, and they don't worship them either. They rule them. Even joy, often seen as harmless, can become a weapon when directed. Joy fuels loyalty, motivates others, and lifts groups higher. Public displays of measured joy, like celebrating a team's win, amplify respect. But uncontrolled joy, boasting, bragging, flaunting, weakens you. The Stoics taught moderation in everything. So how do you practice this? Start by noticing your reactions. The next time anger flares, don't suppress it and don't explode. Ask what it's teaching you. Then redirect it into discipline, into action, into progress. When pain comes, don't drown in it. Treat it like training. Remind yourself, as Seneca did, that difficulties are weights for the mind. When guilt or shame rise, resist the urge to deny them. Face them. Use them as guides for correction. And when joy comes, share it wisely, using it to build connection without losing yourself in the high. If you repeatedly let emotions control you, chaos becomes your habit. But if you repeatedly turn emotions into fuel, mastery becomes your habit. Over time, this becomes instinct. The same way a fighter channels adrenaline into precision, you channel emotion into clarity. Powerful people aren't unfailing statues. They are fully alive, fully aware of every pulse of emotion. But instead of being tossed around by those waves, they learn to surf them. They ride anger into focus, pain into resilience, shame into wisdom, joy into loyalty. They let emotion feed their power without ever letting it drain them. At the heart of Stoicism is the idea that nothing outside of you can truly control you. Not events, not people, not even raw emotion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the secret. Every emotion that rises against you can be turned into something that serves you. Anger becomes the way. Pain becomes the way. Shame becomes the way. In the end, the weak believe that power means hiding their emotions. But the powerful know better. Power means feeling deeply, but never being ruled. It means turning every surge of emotion into a tool that sharpens your edge. To master emotion is not to silence it, but to weaponize it. And when you can do that, nothing, no insult, no betrayal, no storm inside or outside, can shake your foundation. Habit 14. Build a reputation that works for you. Most people think reputation is just about popularity, about being liked or admired. But that's not what a powerful reputation really is. A reputation isn't built on how many people smile at you. It's built on what people say when you're not in the room. It's built on the stories, the whispers, the echoes that carry long after you've left. And the truth is, if you don't deliberately shape your reputation, others will shape it for you. That's why the wise and the powerful guard their reputation as carefully as their own life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Your reputation begins with this, aligning your actions and your words with what you want to be remembered for. Because once you do, the echo works in your favor. The power of a strong reputation is that it enforces itself. You don't have to argue every small point or defend every minor boundary. One decisive action remembered widely carries more force than 100 small explanations. Seneca once said, "A sword never kills anybody. It is a tool in the killer's hand." Reputation works the same way. It's a tool, silent but sharp. You don't have to draw it constantly. People remember what happened the last time someone tested you. And that memory shapes their behavior before they ever try again. Think about history. Leaders who understood reputation didn't waste time correcting every insult or defending every rumor. They took one clear stand, delivered one decisive action, and let it echo. The echo did the work. The same applies to you. If someone disrespects you and you respond with composure but finality, ending the relationship, cutting off access, walking away without drama, that one act seen or even just whispered about shapes how people treat you from then on. Your decisive acts, not your endless words, define that measure. In everyday life, reputation is often underestimated. Think about a workplace. If you're known as the person who always says yes, people will keep piling on work, expecting you to carry it. But if you establish early that you don't tolerate unnecessary tasks, people think twice before dumping them on you. Or in relationships, if you're known as someone who forgives endlessly without consequence, you'll be tested again and again. But if you make it clear once, firmly and calmly, that betrayal means distance, you won't have to repeat yourself. The reputation enforces the boundary. Reputation also ties directly to predictability and unpredictability. If people know you tolerate weakness, they exploit it. If they know you respond inconsistently, they gamble with your patience. But if they know you are decisive, that one firm act is enough to change everything, they treat you with caution. When people realize they don't fully know what you'll do, but they do know the cost of disrespect, they respect you. That's how a reputation both precedes and protects you. Building a reputation requires that you face your own shadows. If you act inconsistently, if you punish one person and let another slide because of favoritism, your reputation weakens. But if you align your actions with principles, even when it's uncomfortable, people notice. They may not like it in the moment, but they'll respect it in the long run. Let's take an example. Imagine someone lies about you. The weak response is to argue with everyone, to explain, to beg people to see the truth. The strong response is to act once, cut off the liar, state your boundary, and then move on without another word. Over time, people will remember not the noise of explanations, but the silence of your certainty. And that silence, that refusal to play their game, becomes your reputation. Seneca reminded us, "He who is brave is free." The bravery to act once clearly frees you from endless battles. Reputation is also tied to consistency. If you punish disloyalty once, but tolerate it later, people stop taking you seriously. But if your actions are consistent, your reputation becomes a shield. You don't have to keep proving yourself. Others prove it for you, whispering your standards wherever you go. The Stoics also understood the value of detachment in shaping reputation. If you're obsessed with being liked, your reputation becomes weak. People sense the desperation and they exploit it. But if your focus is on being respected, not liked, your reputation becomes strong. Respect is rooted in boundaries, in decisive action, in principles that don't shift with every breeze. The psychological impact of reputation is powerful. People edit themselves before they approach you. They hesitate before asking too much. They treat you with caution, even reverence, because they know what you stand for. Jung explained this as the collective unconscious, the way shared beliefs spread invisibly. Your reputation becomes part of that. You no longer have to remind people of your standards. They remind each other. That is the mark of real power. So how do you build this kind of reputation? Start by being clear about your principles. Decide what you will never tolerate and live by that. Then when someone tests you, act decisively once. No drama, no noise, just a clean response. Protect your consistency. Don't enforce boundaries daily with nagging or constant corrections. Let the decisive act echo, and most importantly, let your actions align with your words. Plato said, "We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark." The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Don't be afraid to let the light of your principles guide you, even if it means losing some comfort. At the end of the day, reputation is the shadow you cast. You don't control every whisper, every story, every perspective, but you do control the actions that create them. Build a reputation that speaks before you do, that warns before you arrive, that commands before you utter a word. When people say he doesn't tolerate that, or she cuts people off cold, that's not gossip. That's your shield. And when your reputation works for you, you don't have to fight for respect every day. Respect walks in the room with you. Habit 15. Evolve without warning. Most people crave recognition for every little step they take. They start a new habit and immediately tell the world. They set a goal and broadcast it to anyone who will listen. It gives them validation before they've even accomplished anything. But here's the truth. The more you announce, the more predictable you become. And predictability is weakness. Power doesn't move in straight lines where everyone can see what's coming. Real power evolves quietly without warning. By the time people notice you've changed, it's already too late for them to catch up. Beginnings are fragile. If you expose them too early, they can be crushed by doubt, envy, or sabotage. But when you nurture them in silence, you give them room to grow strong roots before anyone can interfere. Think of the tree. It doesn't ask permission to grow. It doesn't announce its roots spreading underground. It evolves unseen until one day it towers above everything else. Your growth should follow the same law of nature, quiet, steady, undeniable. Most people repeat the same patterns endlessly because they don't question them. They stay predictable, trapped in routines that everyone can see coming. But when you begin evolving internally, questioning your patterns, reshaping your unconscious drives, you start breaking free. You don't need to announce it. By the time people realize you've shifted, you're already living on another level. And because they can't predict you anymore, they can't control you. Consider how fighters train. The amateur boasts about every workout, every sparring session, showing their moves online for validation. But the true warrior trains in silence. They refine their craft unseen, studying, adapting, sharpening skills no one knows they have. Then when the fight comes, their opponent faces someone entirely different from the person they thought they knew. The unpredictability itself becomes a weapon. Seneca wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." By evolving in silence, you anticipate how others will try to challenge you, and you remove their advantage before they even strike. In everyday life, this habit is just as powerful. Think about the friend who suddenly shows up after months of quiet with a new skill, a new discipline, a new strength you didn't expect. That transformation commands respect. It makes people pause, reevaluate, and treat them differently. Compare that to the person who announces their new journey every few weeks, but never follows through. One earns admiration, the other becomes background noise. There's also a psychological advantage in being unreadable. People try to control what they can predict. If they know how you'll react, they can push your buttons. If they know your plans, they can prepare against them. But if you're constantly evolving, new habits, new skills, new perspectives, they can't anticipate you. That uncertainty forces them into caution. When others realize they don't truly know you, even if they think they do, they hesitate. That hesitation is power. Accepting yourself doesn't mean staying static. It means facing your shadows and continuing to grow despite them. When you evolve without warning, you refuse to be locked into an image of who you used to be. You shed your skin quietly, leaving others grasping at ghosts while you've already become someone new. That transformation done silently keeps you untouchable. Think about how this looks in practice. Instead of announcing that you're getting healthier, you quietly build the routine. You train. You eat differently. You sharpen discipline. Months later, people notice not because you told them, but because the results walk into the room with you. Instead of declaring that you're changing careers, you study, prepare, and move silently until the switch is already made. Then, while others are still processing your old self, you've already mastered a new role. Each time you evolve without warning, you gain ground before anyone else can adjust. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Be like the rock against which the surf crashes. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." To evolve without warning is to be that rock steady in silence, unmoved by the crashing noise of others. The world can speculate, criticize, or assume. But it doesn't matter. Your growth doesn't ask for their approval. It reveals itself only when it's undeniable. This habit also protects you from envy. When you announce every move, you invite jealousy and resistance. People may not want you to succeed, and they may try to sabotage you before you've gained strength. But when you move quietly, envy has no target. By the time they notice your success, it's too late. The work is done, the results are real, and the shift is permanent. Announcing every step wastes energy you could have used to actually grow. Silence saves that energy. It funnels it into transformation instead of performance. The powerful don't spend time convincing others they're changing. They change, and the results are louder than any declaration could ever be. So how do you start evolving without warning? Begin with restraint. Resist the urge to tell people your next step. Instead, take the step, then take another. Let the silence build momentum. Focus on becoming unpredictable. Learn new skills that no one expects from you. Break old habits without telling anyone. Surprise even yourself with how far you can move in silence. And when the results show, let them arrive like a storm no one saw coming. In the end, this habit is about freedom. Freedom from the opinions of others. Freedom from the chains of predictability. Freedom from the need to be seen before you've truly grown. Power doesn't ask to be noticed. It moves quietly, and then it arrives all at once. That's the deadliest habit of all, evolving without warning. By the time they realize what you've become, you're already far beyond their reach. Power is never loud. It's quiet, disciplined, and undeniable. The habits you choose today will either chain you to weakness or carry you toward untouchable strength. Remember, your presence speaks before you do, and every decision shapes the legend you leave behind. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to watch one of the suggested videos on the screen. It may be the very reminder you need today. And thank you for being a part of Stoic Tide, where together we walk the path of clarity, discipline, and self-mastery. If you liked it, hit the like button and sub my channel as an act of appreciation.